May the Force be with us.
On your own from the age of 15. Reckless, aggressive, and undisciplined.
This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel.
We have a mission for you. A major weapons test is imminent. We need to know what it is and how to destroy it.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
My Nerd World.
And welcome to it. It's episode number 57 of the My Nerd World Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Jon Justice. Really excited about the podcast today. Got a lot of information to talk about as Celebration 2016 in Europe. Celebration Europe, Star Wars Celebration Europe is going on right now. Wish I was there, although based off of what happened its opening day, I'm kind of okay not having gone all the way to Europe for what took place, and I'll explain coming up. We do have a lot of information to get to on the podcast today. I have an interview that I'm going to share with you, and I think I may actually start the podcast off with it, with the director of Rogue One, Gareth Edwards. Now, this is not an interview that I have done. The Star Wars show earlier this week put out about a 2-minute interview with Gareth Edwards. The director of Rogue One. He also directed one of his first movies called Monsters, which is a very low-budget sci-fi monster film, if you will. Also, of course, the Godzilla reboot, the most recent Godzilla. And they put out an interview that was done with Gareth Edwards shortly after he got the role to direct Rogue One, and it really sets the tone for where I want to take the podcast today. But we do have quite a bit of new information. As I mentioned, Star Wars Celebration Europe didn't quite go off the way that many people thought it was supposed to go off, and I'll talk a bit about this. The assumption was we were supposed to get a trailer, and depending on how you look at it, and depending on your definition of trailer, it isn't an assumption. It's we were told. ABC was airing the secrets, the Journey to the Force Awakens, Secret of the Force Awakens, and this was the documentary that was on the Blu-ray that we got for The Force Awakens. So it wasn't anything new, but in the TV listings, it said 3-minute Rogue One trailer. And actually in the show, Felicity Jones, who plays Jyn Erso in Rogue One, shot a promo at the beginning of the show saying, hey, stay tuned, we have a special sneak preview of Rogue One coming up, and they ended up airing the sizzle, they call it a sizzle reel. It's essentially behind-the-scenes footage. It's almost exactly the same type of clip that we got for The Force Awakens at Comic-Con last year. It's just a behind-the-scenes clip with comments from the actors. There were a couple of just brief shots from the movie. And as a matter of fact, you heard one there a moment ago. I'll play it here in a second. But the final shot of this sizzle reel, doing that thing with my fingers, was Jyn Erso inside of some kind of transport saying, may the Force be with us. Here, I'll play it. This was the end of the sizzle reel.
May the Force be with us.
I mean, it's cool. I got goosebumps seeing that. And the footage we got in the sizzle reel was really cool, but it wasn't a trailer. Now, the people at Celebration itself, who were at the event for the Rogue One panel, and I'm kind of getting way ahead of myself, but we'll talk about it, and then I'll play this Gareth Edwards interview for you. But those that were there were treated, after they played the sizzle reel like 3 times, to a new teaser trailer. It wasn't a full trailer, it was just a teaser trailer, made up of the clips that we got in the original teaser trailer, but also a series of new clips. Now, several different versions of this have leaked out online. I've watched a few of them and gotten the gist of what it is. It looks great. And I'm not sure what Disney's reasoning is at this point for not releasing this particular teaser trailer to the public unless they're just trying to keep Celebration special for the fans. It's just kind of weird because, well, I won't say weird. We as fans, we make, assumptions based off of history. And so a lot of what people were assuming because of what happened last year, they think is going to happen this year. So, for example, last year when Celebration took place in Anaheim, which I went to, we got our second teaser trailer for The Force Awakens. The first one had come out November of the year prior, in November of 2014. So that was in April. So most people were thinking, okay, we're into July now. We only have one teaser for Rogue One. The movie's coming out, at the end of the year, in the middle of December. So we should be getting another trailer. And most people were expecting a full trailer. I wasn't quite expecting a full trailer. I was expecting more along the lines of what they got at Celebration. So the big question is, well, a couple of questions are, why didn't they release that teaser to the public? Will they release that teaser now to the public based off of the fact that it's leaked online with some really, really crappy cell phones? Why did ABC bill this, and was it just a marketing mistake to call it a trailer for the sake of that show? Because people were ticked off last night. And maybe will they release it with Star Trek Beyond, which opens up next week? That's kind of my speculation. San Diego Comic-Con is taking place next week, and the sizzle reel that we got for The Force Awakens, we actually got at Comic-Con. And that's interesting, too, now that I think about it last year, because a lot of people were thinking we were going to get the full trailer at Comic-Con for The Force Awakens, and we got the sizzle reel instead. So if you're keeping track, Disney has essentially done everything that they did for The Force Awakens, minus releasing that full teaser that they got at Celebration Europe to the public. So if it comes out later this week, then they're on the same sort of trajectory in terms of promotion, and we can probably expect the full Rogue One trailer to come out sometime in October. So, again, as fans, we want everything we can get our hands on. And I would think that Disney would want to capitalize on that, because Rogue One is sort of the odd one out. Rogue One is the one that doesn't quite fit, and it's popular. People definitely are getting into it, but at the same time, we as fans, and as it relates to the Star Wars universe as a whole, have never been down this road of a major motion picture not tied to the Saga series. How are we going to deal with that? Now, there is a very interesting thing to note. Let me make this one point, and then I want to play you this interview with Gareth Edwards, because, again, it sets the stage for the latter half of the podcast, and we'll talk a bit about the vibe of this sizzle reel. Some information that came out this week that I thought was really interesting was, apparently, one of the planets that we are going to see in Rogue One is Jedha. It's a Jedha. Two of the characters in the film, the rebels that are going to steal the Death Star plans. One of them, played by Donnie Yen, he's blind, but he's tapped in to the spirituality of the Force. Not a Jedi, as we talked about in past podcasts. You can be one with the Force or be connected to the Force, but not be a Jedi. In order to become a Jedi, you got to go through training, right? You can fire a weapon, but it doesn't mean you're in the military. It's probably a really bad example, but you get the idea. This planet is apparently like Mecca for the Force. People go there to become one with the Force. And even though we don't have Jedis in this movie, although Darth Vader is going to make an appearance, his breathing and a silhouette of Darth Vader appeared in this teaser trailer that we haven't seen yet. Apparently, this is like the spiritual home of the Jedi, which I thought was really interesting. What if these reshoots, okay, this is what I'm wondering. What if these reshoots that took place, that everybody was talking about, and shockingly, people knew about these reshoots that I didn't think would know about these types of reshoots. Like I had mentioned to a buddy at work who, likes Star Wars as a talk show guy, and he's tapped into entertainment and news and stuff like that. But he knew about these reshoots, and I've mentioned things online, and people have talked about, I don't know, I think the movie's in trouble because of these reshoots. I didn't realize how far that information had stretched beyond the hardcore fandom. But let me present to you a theory here, right? So, we traveled to a new location. I have an article here in front of me from IGN. We traveled to a new location called Jeddah. Again, Jeddah. Director Gareth Edwards described Jeddah as on par with Mecca or Jerusalem as far as its significance for those who believe in the Force, even if they can't control themselves. Describing how it became part of the story, Edwards told a group of reporters it came from the fact that the era that our film is set in theory, doesn't have any Jedi. So the idea of having a Star Wars film that doesn't talk about the Force, if you look at what George Lucas was great at, is although he got a story about one thing, he's implying a million other things in the background and ideas are much wider. And obviously our film is using that and telling a story within it. For me, it's like if A New Hope is kind of the story of Jesus, there must be a whole religion behind that. And so it felt like, what was it? For 1,000 generations, the Jedis were the leaders of the spiritual belief system. So it's like there's got to be like a Mecca or a Jerusalem in the Star Wars world. Okay? In Rogue One, two of the characters, Maze Malbus and Shirat Imwi, those are their characters, are on Jeddah when they get caught up in the fight alongside Jyn Erso, said Edwards. It's very contemporary to have I lost my spot here. There we go. To have a situation where the Empire were imposing themselves on what means a lot to the spiritual side of Star Wars for their own reasons, their own goals, and within that era, there's a resistance that's building, that's trying to fight back, but our characters end up having to go to Jeddah, and they basically end up getting pulled into their story a little bit. Now, the filming of the Jeddah sequences was also a different one for Star Wars, with Edwards revealing, we built this set within Pinewood Studios that was 360 degrees, so you could kind of look wherever you wanted. Normally, on a set, the extras are told, okay, on action, you walk over there, on cut, you stop. And we said, okay, for the next hour, you're going to be in this character, and you're cooking food, you're working on this car thing, or whatever it is. And the crew wearing costumes, so if the camera turns around on them, they wouldn't be in the shot. So we tried to keep it all flowing. The actors were given freedom to go where they wanted to go, to do a scene in a way that they felt was right. So there's a lot of freedom, and it had this organic kind of different vibe to it than you associate sometimes with Star Wars. So that felt really exciting. As a fan, he wanted to go to these places. What's just over the horizon? Now, Edwards said that no, the name Jeddah and its similarity to Jedi wasn't a coincidence. He said the whole real backstory of it all is more of a thing for canon and Lucasfilm, but I feel like it's definitely, if you believe in the Jedi and you believe in the Force, it feels like Jeddah is somewhere where you could visit in your lifetime. It's like the spiritual home of the Jedi. So, I was wondering if whether or not their reshoots had to do perhaps with the addition of this. Reading this, it sounds like this was the plan all along, but you do wonder if perhaps this wasn't the plan all along and they didn't have this type of angle, this type of addition of the Force in the film, and felt like they needed to have some kind of a through line for the saga films. I think, regardless of when it happened and when it took place, I think it's brilliant on the part of these filmmakers to go and do this. Because now you've taken a movie that, in essence, is a war film, different from the saga films, doesn't have any connecting characters as it relates to the larger story of the Skywalkers, apart from having Darth Vader in it, right? But you add this element where it provides more backstory for the Force itself. And that I find really, really fascinating and an incredibly smart move to keep the hardcore fans engaged. I mean, this gets me excited for this movie in a way that I wasn't before. Not just because it's Star Wars and the spectacle and the visuals that we're going to get with this film. Because remember, this is probably a movie that is going to be, for all intents and purposes, unless